Welcome to our presentation on separable prefix verbs. These are a special kind of verb that are quite common in Pennsylvania Dutch and also in Standard German. Now, if you haven't learned the present tense, you'll definitely want to learn that first. So go back in our earlier lectures and find the one on the present tense and do that. That way you'll be able to make a lot more sense of the current presentation. Let's start by looking at this verb here, opwekken, opgewekt. And that verb means to wake up. As you remember, the infinitive is opwekken and the past participle is opgewekt. Now I want to draw your attention to that first part of that infinitive form, opwekken. I've put in italics here, but when our vocabularies in this lecture series, I usually put a dot in between the separable prefix and the main stem of the verb. So in our verb here, opwekken, the uf is a separable prefix, and the wekken is the root of the verb. Well, what does it mean if it's a separable prefix? Basically, in the present tense, the separable prefix goes to the end of the clause. So when you're taking a verb and you're putting it in the present tense, for these separable prefix verbs, you have to take off the separable prefix and put it at the end of the clause or group of words, the sentence. So let's give an example. To say I wake up, you would say ich wek auf. Ich wek auf. I wake up. You don't say ich aufwek. That would be not separating the prefix off. Instead, you separate it off and you put it at the end. Ich wek auf. Now notice in the past tense, you just use the past participle as you always do. You don't need to worry about the separable prefix separating off. The separable prefix only separates in the present tense. So only in the present tense. In the past tense, you don't need to worry about it. Now, the past participle also gives you a strong hint as to what a separable prefix is. So in opgewekt, the separable prefix always comes before the g of these past participles. So often in dictionaries, they won't put in that little dot that I put in to help you out. And usually when you're writing these things, you don't put in that little dot. You would just write opwekken, no little dot between the uf and the wekken. And so if you're looking at the dictionary, one big clue that the uf would be a separable prefix is that it comes before the g in the past participle. The second you see that past participle, opgewekt, you know the uf is a separable prefix verb, even if the dictionary doesn't help you out by putting that little dot in between the uf and wekken in the infinitive. So past tense, you just use the past participle as usual. So let's say you've got this sentence here. Ich hab die Kuh aufgeweckt. That means I woke the cow up. Remember, to form the past tense, you just use a form of ich hab, I have, and you take the past participle and you put it at the end. Ich hab die Kuh aufgeweckt. I woke up the cow. You could also translate it as I have woken up the cow. Let's look at some very common separable prefixes, and these are often used with verbs of motion. So we can see our first two here, rai and nai. Remember that EI makes the I sound. Rai and nai, they both mean in. The root here, EI, I, means in, but the letter before that, the R or the N, says a little bit extra. So when you use rai, it means in, but towards you, towards the speaker, or towards some character. Rai means in towards the speaker, and nai means in, but going away from the speaker. So in Pennsylvania Dutch, you have two ways of saying in, rai and nai, or two separable prefixes to say in, rai, nai. In a similar fashion, there are two separable prefixes that say out. One of them is ras, and the other one is nas. Ras, nas. And they both mean out. Ras means going out towards the speaker, and nas means going out away from the speaker. In some dialects, these things are pronounced as rouse and naus with more of the ow sound. In some dialects, it's more like an ah sound, ras and nas. Now, you'll notice when the movement is going towards the speaker, it starts with that R. Rai means in the direction of the speaker. Ras means out towards the speaker. And similarly, the ones that begin with N mean away from the speaker. Nai means in, away from the speaker. And nas means out, away from the speaker. So here's an interesting part of Pennsylvania Dutch, which is quite a bit different from English. The movement, the speaker's relationship to the movement determines a bit the separable prefix. Let's look at some very common separable prefix verbs. So we've got ufwekken, ufgewekt. We've seen that already. And we have an example here. Ik wek die koe uf. I wake up the cow. Or I am waking up the cow. Right? All the same thing in Pennsylvania Dutch. Rai komma. Rai komma. That means to come in. You'll remember from an earlier lesson that asterisk means that you use the verb ich bin when you're making the past tense. Instead of usually you use ich hab. But with verbs of motion, you often use ich bin, as in this case, rai, komma. Rai is the separable prefix. Let's look at some examples of this being used. Die boeven komma rai. That means the boys, die boeven, come in. Die boeven komma rai. The boys are coming in, or the boys do come in, or the boys come in. Die boeven komma rai. It's present tense, so the prefix moves to the end. But let's say we had the past tense. Die boeven zijn rai komma. The boys came in. Or the boys have come in, any of those things. Die boeven zijn rai komma. Remember, the rai doesn't separate it out in the past tense, just the present tense. Ras komma means to come out. Ras komma. Here's our example. Die Katz komt ras. Katz is a cat. The cat comes out. Die Katz kommt ras, or the cat is coming out. The past tense. Die Katz ist rausgekommen. The cat came out. Die Katz ist rausgekommen. The prefix no longer separates because in the past tense it doesn't. Let's look at nige and niganga. You'll remember that ge, those infinitives that end in an H, they will add an N before you add any ending that begins with an E. So for example, ma gena nai, you can see the N coming there in gena. Ma gena nai, we're going in. If what I'm talking about with this little N is throwing you off, that's in the lesson present tense part 2. Ma gena nai, we're going in. How about the past tense? Ma sind naigegangen. Once again, prefix does not separate in the past tense. You just use the past participle as always. Ma sind naigegangen. We went in. Anfangen, anfangen is a verb that means to begin. Now, here these ones are particularly tricky. Fangen all on its own means kind of to catch, fangen. But when it has that separable prefix, it changes that meaning of that root fangen completely. So fangen on its own means like to catch or to grab, but anfangen means to begin. Let's take this sentence. Die Arbeit fangt an. Arbeit means work. Die Arbeit fangt an. That means the work is beginning, or the work begins. If you didn't see that an, you might think it means the work grabs or something like this. And this is tricky when you don't recognize a verb, because the separable prefix in the present tense is often at the end of the sentence. And if you just looked up fangen in the dictionary, you'd have like, capture, catch, something like that. And if you look up anfangen, you see that it means to begin. So here's a trick. When you have verbs in Standard German or Pennsylvania Dutch, you have to watch out for these separable prefixes in the present tense because they can change the meaning of the verb a lot. So anfangen means to begin, but fangen means to catch. How about the past tense? Hast du angefangen? Did you begin? Have you begun? Hast du angefangen? Aufhören, aufgehört means to stop. To stop. Notice how that GH is pronounced like a K. Aufhören, aufgehört, to stop. Here's another thing another word where the separable prefix changes it a lot. Hören would mean to hear someone. But aufhören means to stop. So you have to watch that in that present tense when that separable prefix goes to the end. For example, de Regen hört auf. Regen means rain. De Regen hört auf. The rain stops. De Regen hört auf. Past tense. Es hat net aufgehört. It hasn't stopped. It has not stopped. It did not stop. Es hat net aufgehört. The out of it, we've seen that already. That means work. It means work as a noun, like I have to go to work, or I have to go to the work, or the work is starting now. It doesn't mean work is a verb. Work as a verb is schaffen. And here are a couple of very useful phrases. Komm rein and kommt rein. They both mean come in. Komm rein is when you're talking to one person, and kommt rein is when you're talking to more than one person. In a lot of dialects, especially in Amish speech, kommt is pronounced kommet. Kommet rein, come in. But komm rein and kommt rein. Now, the fancy name for these kind of words is imperatives. Imperative means giving a command. These are imperatives. Now, we could describe how you form the imperative. Basically, you take the infinitive, you drop the ending E from the infinitive, and if it's the plural, you add a T. So you can learn those. Those are useful if you find that useful, or you can just model the imperatives on these words here. Komm rein and kommt rein. Basically, one person talking to one person, you're telling them to do something, no ending. Komm rein. Talking to more than one person, throw in that T. Kommt rein. But I'll take you through these steps in forming the imperatives. Let's use them with the word, the very common word gucke, geguckt, to look at something. Gucke, geguckt. So you would take the infinitive, remember that's the first form, gucke, so you take gucke. Then you drop the final E, so it would be guck. Now, already where you're saying look. So if you were telling your friend you wanted to say, hey, look, you'd say guck. Often imperatives have this other word thrown onto them, mol, which kind of softens them a slight bit. But so you might say guck mol. Look here, please. Guck mol. But guck is the imperative. Guck. I just dropped the final E and I got the imperative. Now, if I'm talking to more than one person, I just throw in that T. Guckt. Guckt. And in some dialects, this would be something like gucket. Guckt. That means look. Hey, y'all, look. Guckt. Okay, that's all for our lesson on separable prefix verbs. Remember, they're only tricky in the present tense. Everywhere else, like the past tense, they're regular. Keep learning. Mach's gut.